And like I said, you ruined everything. Why are we at this page? What was it called? Anchor here. We can start. We can begin. Right. Lillian's gone. Adam. He's here. There you are. I see you. Yeah, I'm going to mark Josh. You're absent, Josh. But you know. Okay. I'm just marking. Sometimes you start doing arbitrary things for no reason. By the way, you got to admit, this is a look I've been thinking about for a very long time. Mass with old-time 3D glasses, you got to admit.
Maybe add like.
I make this work. Gives me a head.
Maybe add a propeller hat on top. I think that would really be good.
I'll work on that. That will be a look. So, a document-based question is simply an essay question. And the normal idea is a 5-paragraph essay. Is there an extra one here? Someone just throw one here? Who did that? Why did you tell me about this and I couldn't? Go like this. No, this. It's just going to go right there. All right, so it's just, it is an essay. So essays like we've done, we did that essay, we're doing thesis statements. So, opening paragraph, in context, then you write your thesis, and then your body paragraphs. And then, like I said, body paragraphs is basically just a short idea with a topic sentence. But all the documents are, I know it's a little bit more work, I understand that. But the documents, you have to do approximately use 2 documents per paragraph to use as evidence to prove your thesis. And how do we do that? Remember how we talked about purpose, and that's why we did those 2 documents from Calhoun? What the author is trying to say, you paraphrase that as an example to prove your thesis statement. Now, what does that mean? Well, each paragraph has a topic sentence. That topic sentence has got to be in your thesis. You ever know what I'm talking about, right? So you relate that purpose to the topic sentence, it's related to the thesis. And that's all it is. I know it's a little bit more work because you have to read through the documents and then figure out how the purpose of that relates to your argument and know that they're biased. So this is a point of view they have. And you have to relate it to something you know. Like we talk about the Pakenham letter, you have to relate it to, this was about annexing Texas. You have to relate it to something you know. So you have to get that outside information, things you know. But that's all this to it. I know that's easy for me to say, but the documents give you great hints about where to go. And so normally in a DBQ, we would use 6 documents. In a 5-paragraph essay, that's 3 per body paragraph. You only use them in the body. That makes sense? But next week, we're going to do this DBQ. This is one exactly the way the College Board did them before we've had a plague. Before the plague. This is the way they did it. And you have to use 6 documents. Well, we're only going to do 4 in class. I'm sorry, use 4. We're going to do a 4-paragraph essay, not a 5-paragraph. So that's only 2 per paragraph. Why? Time reasons. We have a shorter amount of time in class. Sound good to everybody? I'll remind you again, but I'm just telling you, please read through it. And online, I've given you more samples of outlines and how to use documents. Please look at this on your own. So when we take some time in class, I guess you'll be doing it online. I'm sorry, that's where life is. But you have a good idea. Yes?
I was just about to ask, what day is the DBQ?
I wish I could do it Wednesday, but it's probably going to have to be Thursday. So it's probably you guys are going to be in class.
Okay.
And what we'll do is you can write or type. Normally, in the old days, a year and a half ago, we'd write it all because all the AP exams were handwritten. But my guess is because of the pandemic and we are not going to have the vaccines until the summer.
You don't think so?
No. I'm sorry. Maybe we'll luck out, but the Trump administration did not buy enough of the vaccines at work because no one knows. And so we're now behind other countries in line. So we're only going to have enough vaccine for about 50 million people.
It's not like our country's like 300.
Yeah. And I'm actually disgusted by it. It infuriates me instead of being out of here by maybe by the end of April. It's going to be June. Unless we lock out. Maybe something else will happen, but that's what it looks right now.
Do you think we'll stay open, like school?
What do you mean?
Do you think we'll be able to keep on going to school, or do you think it's going to get shut down again?
Oh yeah, my guess is, I hope not, but be ready after Christmas.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Be ready, because it's going to flow again. I wish it would. But hopefully the vaccines will come out, but when I found out about the screw up about not buying that, it just infuriates me. Yeah.
So we should plan on having to do a test online this year.
Yeah, so plan on doing it online in time.
So we just type.
Yeah, but if you really don't want to type, you can handwrite it.
And second,
But that, I can't imagine we won't be typing. And if we have to write it, then we'll make do, right? We just make do, whatever, yeah.
and since we have the documents that are unchanged, 6.
You can use all 6, but you have to use at least 4. Good question. And we'll talk more about it. Yeah, I hope. Maybe we get a miracle in April.
Another plague that beats out this plague.
And the thing about it is, the way combination of deforestation, which is a word now I can't say,
Plague maybe.
and climate change, we'll see, we're gonna have more plagues.
We need to be creative. This sucks.
But it's bad. I knew it would get bad, but when it actually hits, when we're losing more people a day than September 11th, it's bad. You grab the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of samples, lots of practice. Let's go ahead then and get back to notes. Now, I changed your grade, like I told you. I've changed grade to 0. If you didn't turn it in, and I forget to do stuff. I think I hit send and didn't send. I mean, it's just a pain. Everything, it's so much harder, at least. Let's put it this way. Maybe you're lucky out of the fact that I hate doing it online. I hate it because it takes much more time. You got to push 7 buttons. I just hate it. So because I hate it and find it tough, that's why I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt now. So take advantage of it.
You appreciate it.
I mean, you would not get the extra time if it was a regular class, but you wouldn't need it. It just things would be easier. All right, and if you missed any of those classes last week, you're accountable for it. We are going to do another just note quiz here pretty soon on Friday. That has to be specifically from there. You won't be able to find out or just a cursory check somewhere. It's a big thing. I'm looking for purpose. You have to be able to relate it to things we learn in class. Make sense? You need that. You just can't list out what's in the document. You have to relate it to things we know, and that's how you know the purpose, because of what you learned in class. So let's get back to this. Who's that?
Yeah.
Who? Not,
No. Oh, Henry Clay.
that's Henry Clay. Remember, he proposed, what did he propose? What law? 1850, going to solve all the problems? The Omnibus Bill, which we lumped together as a compromise of 1850. Zachary Taylor, he proposed California's a problem. He proposed to turn New Mexico and California into what?
Just 2 things.
And they would be free. The problem was slavery in the territories. And by the way, if you don't know this, you better know this. And I did assign the notes as homework, obviously. Forgot to turn that in. But 2 big slave states. 2 big slave, or did I say slave states? 2 big free states. Solve the problem. Terrible idea. Who were those Southern congressmen who threatened secession at the drop of a hat?
The fire.
Yeah, those are the fire eaters. And so we got to the compromise of 1850. That's Daniel Webster. You got to admit, Al likes, he looks like an owl, doesn't he? Oh, I should have. Almost forgot. Remember the Nat Turner laws? By the way, don't you love that? I just really want to know who this guy is. Who is he? Yes.
That's my uncle.
Yeah. Good, I knew it's in the family. Remember, this is the thesis statement I gave yesterday. A few of you turned ones in, and pretty good ones. We just need something, that why, the purpose. The purpose of it is something that ties these 3 together, like racism, a positive good theory. And that makes it much stronger. So something like a common thread that runs through the whole thing. Doesn't have to be that profound, but something to tie it together. That gives a strong thesis. 1 to 2 sentences. In fact, your opening paragraph, a few sentences of context, you know, like the backstory to what's going on. Thesis, start writing. So back to this. So we went through, that's Daniel Webster, Al. So the point is they're all dying. They are nearing the end of these old politicians whose goal was to keep the country together. And this is becoming a crisis because the new members of Congress, especially the Southerners, those are the fire eaters. We're not going to compromise anymore, even though they're the ones who were bullies. And then one more man came in. In fact, he was so ill from maybe cholera, maybe other diseases. He was so ill that had to be carried in on a stretcher.
Mr. Partridge, your mic's muted.
Oh, I just muted myself. I have no idea how I muted myself. Maybe that was somebody else said, we got to shut him up from yelling. Going back in. Look at the joke. Everyone, look at the hair. You can't fake this. His speech said we got to go against the compromise of 1850 and have 2 presidents. 2 presidents, one northern president and one southern president, each with a veto. That is the only way to save the country from civil war. So a southern president can veto anything that will hurt slavery. But if you have 2 presidents with a veto, what's going to be passed?
Nothing.
And it's almost impossible to pass anything now with 1 president, because you have to get it through both the House and the Senate with Senate rules. I mean, they literally don't do anything. The Senate today basically approves judges, confirms judges, and then they go raise money. That's literally all they do, which is kind of terrifying in the middle of a pandemic. With the economic, it appears like we're dipping into a much worse recession. And it's impossible to get anything passed, and he wants to make it more. By the way, what's this? He's strangling a kitten. No, he's not, but he is evil. 2 presidents. And he did not want civil war, even though clearly this is just outright bullying. But I have to give this something. He's nearing the end too, obviously. He would have less than 6 months until. Oh, I just want you one more with neck hair. Look at the neck hair. Charleston, South Carolina. That's his grave. That horrible man. 1850. But I want you to imagine. Just imagine something. It's a dark, stormy night. Is everyone with me on that? You know, one of those nights, you hear strange noises in the house. You're trying to sleep and things wake you up. You see shadows, hear things. Yeah, it's kind of scary nights. You just start to doze off, just start to sleep. And then you open your eyes and you see this. Where's it at? There's Calhoun's death mask. What if I muted myself again? Yeah, that could be the most terrifying death mask ever. That is absolutely, and they're all pretty terrifying. That looks exactly the way you think it would. And yes, people have tried that for Halloween now. Yes.
Are his eyes open when they shoot? Because it looks like his eye was open.
Sometimes the eyes would be open, he's dead. So they'd open the eyes so you get that, and then they would carve to try to get that look. Same thing they do on this head, you know, because the hair would make it kind
So it's
of.
not plaster on the face.
Huh?
They don't put plaster on the face?
No, they put plaster on it, then they make the mask, and then they will kind of, they will fiddle with it to make a smoother look. And so that's Calhoun. That's his death mask. So there's Millard Fillmore, the last picture taken in June 1850, early June. And by that time, by that summer, when Congress goes home, remember it's 1,000 degrees and with 100% humidity in the summer, Washington, D.C. Congress does not meet. Everybody goes home in the summer. Clay went home, everybody went home. Calhoun went home to die. I don't know. I've never looked in that grave. But, the reason that made me laugh. They thought it was Civil War. I mean, they really did. They thought it was over. Congress, there were literally fistfights and people flashing guns to each other. There was a standoff and shooting between U.S. cavalry and Texas Rangers in Santa Fe. It looked like the end. It looked like it was over. So the July 4th celebration, 1850, many thought might be the last one. The country lasted 76 years, and that's it. 74 years, I'm sorry. That's it. I mean, that really looked like the end. Taylor actually went in his dress uniform as a general. He's president. He's not a general anymore. But he went as a general, as kind of a symbol saying he will fight to defend the Union. He's doing his Andrew Jackson imitation. And he will not back down from having two states. Clay won't allow that bill to be split up, and he's back in Kentucky. It's over. I mean, they thought it was over. And you can imagine a wool uniform, hot, miserable. When Taylor got done, he wasn't feeling good already. And then he had his favorite dessert. And here's an actual picture of that dessert before he ate it. I had people there to take the picture. Chilled cream and cherries. Ice cream.
Pretty good.
And we all know how you got ice cream in 1850, don't you?
Straight from the cow.
Yeah, freezing cow. Okay, pre-refrigeration. We got a few more years to the beginnings of refrigeration. You know how they did it? In the winter, they go to lakes and cut off blocks of ice. Then they put it in an ice house, usually underground, insulated ice house, so that it would last all winter, or all summer. All winter, big deal, but all summer. And so it cost a lot, but you could get a little bit of ice and have that. And I know, don't even think about what's in the ice, but don't go there. That's how they did it. Just at this time, the first refrigeration was being made in Louisiana with a steam engine, which not very practical, but it's coming. Yeah.
That reminds me of like in Little House on the Prairie when Nellie locked the one guy in the ice house.
Oh, in the ice house? Little House on the Prairie, that's it. We're going back to the 1970s there for shows. Well, after he ate this, he got a little stomachache, woke up in the middle of the night in agony, soon in and out of consciousness, and I think you probably know where this is going. 5 days after, he died. The second president to die, and yes, there's all kinds of talk of conspiracy. Was he murdered? Now, there's absolutely no evidence of it, but we are the United States, so we definitely believe in all kinds of conspiracy theories. But he died. Almost certainly, though, it was not the ice cream. Cholera. The third president in a decade to die of cholera. Harrison died of cholera. Polk died right after he left office from cholera, and then Taylor. Don't drink the water in D.C. Who will save the day? I mean, literally, think about it. The country looks like it's going to war, and the president just dies. We don't know.
How do you spell cholera?
Huh?
How do you spell?
How do I spell it?
C-O-L-E-R-A.
Yeah. Who will save the day? Wow, there's only one person. And we all know who. We know who. You know who.
Calhoun.
Could it be?
Andrew Johnson.
Raoul C. Calhoun. John's brother came in from South Carolina. Full dress uniform. How do we know it's not John? See the glasses? But same finger, right? Same ring. He came in and organized, he's made up. Okay, so I made him up. No, there's no Raoul.
I like his mustache.
Yeah. A former student who was a very good artiste, made this, and I love it. He did a good job. Doesn't that kind of look like that one picture I showed you? Well, it wasn't really a hero per se, but Millard Fillmore, the new president, so you're right, Christian, Millard Fillmore, he was more open to compromise. He was open to the compromise of 1850. He was a northerner who was much more pro-South than actually the southern Zachary Taylor. So we got Fillmore. And then, with Clay still in Kentucky, nearing the end, the little giant, Stephen Douglas of Illinois, Senator Douglas, he would break up the bill. He would break up the bill into smaller parts, just like Clay did back in 1820 to get the Missouri Compromise. Yeah, he was like 5'4", so he was the little giant. Great ambition to be president, a brilliant man. We're not done with Stephen Douglas. Broke up the bill. So the bill could pass individually. So yesterday, I laid out the 5 parts of the Compromise of 1850. So go back and look at your notes from yesterday and look at them. So these are the first 2 I showed you, but number 2 I told you was different. The original one was to get rid of slavery. Now it's California free and banning the slave trade. So no more open-air slave market. So that's what you got to have for number 2. Just change slavery abolished to no slave trade. It was a symbolic nod to the North. Yes, it angered the South, but it was only symbolic. They just wouldn't have the open-air markets. But California free, what section, North or South, would overwhelmingly vote for this? North or South? North, because California is free. So the North voted for this. So it could pass. It's not a true compromise. In fact, all Southern members of Congress, regardless of what party, voted against. But there's more Northerners. Next, this one passed popular sovereignty. They didn't use the word because it was so toxic. But what it said is they can write their own constitution down the road. So that's popular sovereignty. But here's the thing. They can write it down the road. That means before they write their constitution and then vote on it as a territory, and get this down, it's open to slavery. It'll be open to slavery until they decide. Who voted for this? What section, North or South? The South. But they got just enough allies in the North to get it passed. And then the last part, already mentioned, the fugitive slave law, with all its restrictions, would be passed, and then the Texas border. Northern states were furious about this, but it passed with the South. That's the compromise. North, South, South. It's mostly a pro-Southern bill. Of course, California free is a pretty big coup for free soilers. But that's how it passed. These 5 things. And the Compromise of 1850. So that's what happened. So the current Texas border, that's what come out of this. And so what that means is, this Compromise of 1850, if you look at this, all this I talked about yesterday in class, we just added one thing right here. That's why I told you not to write that down. Here it is. This is now open to slavery. In fact, the brand new, New Mexico was a little behind. In Santa Fe, they voted for slave codes in 1851. Utah, right away. It was mostly the Mormon population around Salt Lake City, and they were generally against slavery, but they immediately opened up the slave codes. Why? because they want to prove to the United States that they could be citizens of the United States. There are other issues. Plural marriage will be a problem down the road for Utah. But, right here, fugitive slave law, was it successful? Well, they thought so when it first passed. They got the, champagne came out, they popped the corks, they hugged, we saved the Union. I mean, they were just overjoyed. It was like, oh, I mean, it went from, it's over, we're gonna fight, the Union can't survive, to we saved it. Was it successful? Did it save the Union?
For a time, probably.
Is the Union still here today?
Yes, it might be.
Well, we don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but as of this moment, the Union is here. Yeah, it saved the Union. It didn't stop Civil War, but it saved the Union. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. If Civil War would happen in 1850, the South would have won. South would have won without a doubt. No doubt about it. Unless they really screwed up. Of course they screwed up. And in 1860, or 61, when it actually started, when the South started the Civil War, it was a close run thing. A couple different things could have happened, and a couple different things would have happened, and the North would have lost. But here's why it's so decisive. This is why in those 10 years, see the red lines here? Those are the railroads that have been built by 1850. Not much, right? Here at 1860. This represents all the industrialization, all the new factories that were built in the United States from 1850 to 1860, and what section of the country had most of it? This would be decisive for the victory of the United States. Decisive. Move troops, move men, move equipment that the South could not do. Combined with the additional industrial base, hey, you got to have a lot of iron production. Iron. Think about all the equipment from cannon to muskets. This would be decisive. Still a close run thing. So the election of 1852 was almost a relief. From 1840, we had 3 really contested, bitter elections. And this one, you have the Democrats who nominated Franklin Pierce of New Hampshire, and they rolled in as, we saved the Union. Compromise in 1850, yay! And he's from New Hampshire. By the way, his great-great-great-great-grandson was George W. Bush, who was president when you were born. Yeah. So there's a connection there on his mom's side. He's what we call a doughface. They called it then a doughface. The term doesn't make much sense now, but it made sense in 1852. When I mean dough, I mean like bread dough. You remember bread dough? I'll explain it more in a sec. The Whigs tried one more time with the general, this time Old Fuss and Feathers. Winfield Scott. The problem is Fuss and Feathers, that doesn't really sound like Old Hickory, does it? It never really worked. And the Free Soilers lost a lot of their steam with the Compromise of 1850. So John Hale was a prominent former Free Soil Democrat, but they're not going to have the support. I mean, this is a big Democratic year because the Democrats took the credit for the Compromise of 1850, which is ironic because Clay, who originally proposed it but was dead by then, was a Whig. A doughface was a Southerner. I'm sorry, a doughface is a Northerner. He's from New Hampshire who supported the South. That's a doughface. And so we're going to have a couple doughface presidents. Now, think about white dough. Yeah.
Oh, what's with the hands?
They're all copying Napoleon. Napoleon had so many portraits painted of him, like this, that they all were copying him, even when they had photography. And by the way, Napoleon did that because that was actually, a lot of people did painted, when they painted their portrait with their hand here. Just Napoleon did it so much, everyone just thought Napoleon must have done this all the time. Anybody know why they did this? Hands are hard to paint. So they hide the hand. So they're like this. You have to paint a hand. You heard this thing, oh, Napoleon must have had stomach cancer or something. Yes, he did die of stomach cancer, but that's not why he did this. He's not like holding his stomach in because it hurts. And Napoleon was taller than, he was average height. Don't forget. But here's a dough face. Just imagine you take white bread dough. Ever get that concept of white bread dough? Cover your face on it. So you look white, like the Northern White Republic. I know this doesn't make much sense to us today, but the Northern White Republic. But if you take off the dough, it hides the black face for a slave kingdom in the South.
Okay.
I know it's really weird. And it seems like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Just go with it on that. So that's why they called it dough face. In 1852, it made perfect sense. So Pierce won a resounding victory. And the Democrats did quite well. But this hid bitter divides in the Democratic Party and the Whig Party. A lot of Northern Democrats might have came back in 1852, but they were free soilers. And they're not happy. They are divided. But a pretty big victory. And don't forget, the electoral vote's all that matters. And 7% or 6% is a big victory in an election. It's a big, really big victory. Heck, 4% is a really big victory. Yeah.
Where'd the last 5%?
Huh?
That's like,
Oh, Hale and other parties. A lot of free soilers. A lot of free soilers. But a lot were like, they knew a third party takes away votes from somebody else, so they went back to the Democrat. In 1848, free soil Democrats voted for Van Buren, and that helped get Taylor. Remember, third parties take away votes from another candidate. That's why we don't have third parties. And a lot of times I think we'd be better off like that, but that's the system we have. But the changes were coming, partially fueled by the most popular book of that era. One of the most popular books of the 19th century, Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. If you ever have to read it, it's a hard book for people to read today, but it was because it's just the way they write prose then. But Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote a story about a brave family, slave family, and all the hell they went through as slaves, the torture, the breaking up of families, and then attempted escapes. Uncle Tom is going to be a great hero in this. Now, they'll take minstrel shows where they would make fun of black. Remember I told you about Cuffies and that horrific term Sambo? Mm-hmm. And minstrel shows would make fun of them. Uncle Tom would turn into a joke, which is such garbage. They would turn this into making fun of African Americans. But that wasn't the original intent of the story. The Beecher family was a very prominent abolitionist family. Her brother was a prominent Protestant minister who was very much involved with abolitionism and sending weapons to free soilers in Kansas. That's another story down the road. How do you think the South reacted? Or she'd never actually been to the South, but heard enough to a pretty accurate story. The story's good, it's just hard for us to read today. How did the South react to this? A direct attack on them. This book would be banned. In fact, if you had this book in the South, there's a chance you'd be lynched. Be murdered. This book was censored. Remember what I told you? The system of slavery deprives liberty for everybody. It's not just the slaves, so a lot of people can act like it doesn't affect them. No, it does directly affect them. Wherever there's slavery, everybody's freedom is deprived. And they're all culpable. But massive sensation. In fact, the second most popular book was another book that was written by a free man in the North who's of African descent, a black man in the North who was kidnapped as he was a former slave, a runaway slave, brought him to Louisiana, was enslaved, and it's called 12 Years a Slave, by 12 Years a Slave. They just made a movie of that about 5 years ago, which is a pretty tough movie to watch. They try to give the horrors of slavery, and it's worse than they have in the book. But that was the other most popular book, Kidnapping. Speaking of kidnapping, the fugitive slave law almost immediately infuriated the North, absolutely infuriated them. First off, remember I told you what a posse was. Every single free white man must join a posse. They must join or they go to jail. You must join to run down former slaves or you go to jail or pay a fine. And anybody who was accused of being a runaway slave, they would go in front of a judge, not a court, just a judge for a court order. That was the law. And the judges would be paid for their time. $5 they would get if they found that person to be free and not a runaway slave. What they would say, not a fugitive. $10 if they found him to be a fugitive. Now they said it's because there's more paperwork, but doesn't that look like a bribe? And we're talking thousands of dollars in purchasing power for today. That looks like a bribe. Even if the judges couldn't be bribed or weren't being bribed, it gave the appearance of it. And of course judges can be bribed. We'd like to say they're above that, but no, of course not. We are in here. I'm not, but you are. That's a hint. Kit Kats might get you places. But, and northern states say this is infringing on state laws. You can't, the federal government can't come into a state and make you do something. This is at a time when the Bill of Rights didn't even apply to states. But, in response, northern states passed personal liberty laws that directly contradicted the fugitive slave laws. They passed these personal liberty laws. So personal liberty laws, like for example, you didn't have to join a posse. Not all northern states. Up here, New England, Pennsylvania, New England, and New York. They passed these. Can you imagine how the Southerners reacted to this? It's not, yeah. How dare you? You're condemning us to the hells of slave rebellion. This shows that Northerners really don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the government. They only want to destroy us. They hate us. They want us to die. And Southerners said, you're depriving us of our rights to have slaves by passing laws like this. And they came up with a code name for their pro-slavery attitude. And it is, by definition, hypocrisy. And it's permissions, states' rights. And states' rights became code for doing whatever it takes to defend and protect slavery. Everyone got that? States' rights. To do everything they can to protect slavery. Now, they really don't mean they want states to have state law over the Constitution.
Because they don't want the North to have that.
Yeah, they don't want the North to do this.
They want rights for their states.
They just want to make sure slavery is protected. They want the federal government to protect slavery, and they want states to protect slavery, and that's it. So they're going to go this whole thing, states' rights, it's all states' rights, but states' rights just meant slavery. And they'll resurrect this again after the Civil War to try to justify why they seceded. It was all for states' rights. They'll resurrect states' rights again in the 1950s and 1960s, saying we don't want civil rights, it's states' rights. If we want to segregate our schools, states' rights. It's out of this that, has anyone ever heard this term for the Civil War, the war between the states? Nobody called it the war between the states until the 1880s and 1890s, when they tried to go back and justify it with this states' rights. So with that, and if you haven't heard about it, that kind of surprises me. But another big thing that happened, filibusters. Filibusters, everyone got this, filibusters. Filibusters were citizens of the U.S., and they're basically pirates. They're soldiers of fortune. They're mostly Southerners, and they try to go to Latin America and Central America and overthrow governments to get the United States to annex them as what type of states? Slave states. It even happened in Nicaragua, where a filibuster by the name of, where's Walker? William Walker right here, actually overthrew the government with money and money from benefactors from the South, big Southern plantation owners, and tried to get the U.S. to annex them. They even tried to invade Costa Rica. Costa Rica fought them back, and that's like the defining moment of Costa Rica. I really like Costa Rica, so I know that. And eventually he'd be overthrown and executed. But they're trying to expand slave states. I should add, they became so prominent as basically just a bunch of thugs that became a nickname for something. Taking the term filibuster, which means freebooter, pirate. And it became a nickname for something in the Senate that used to never happen, but happens all the time now. What?
It's when you want to delay something, so you basically just don't do it.
Talk it to death.
Yeah.
Unlimited debate in the Senate. So everyone got that? I didn't type that in, so I have to put that in. This would lead to the term for unlimited debate in the Senate. You want to know why nothing passes the Senate? Why nothing is done? It's the filibuster. To pass a law in the Senate requires a supermajority because the Senate rules. If people complain about the government, that's what they complain about. Last thing for the bell rings. Also, it's called the Austin Manifesto. So the Pierce administration said they want to take Cuba. And this is a picture of James Buchanan, Secretary of State, being threatened by filibuster. See the 6-barrel pistol? You'd fire, it's muzzle load, turn it by hand, fire it again. Sometimes it exploded in the shooter's hand. Okay? But, and turned Cuba into what kind of state? 2 slave states. This didn't happen, but it showed the divide. By the way, we're coming to, of course, and we all know it, the little giant. All right, so please look at those documents. There's reading, I have a sign, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Please check the posts on Teams. I know it's a pain, but we got to do it. Life would be so much easier. Oh, I was going to write this in, 6:15 to 6:31 for Monday.
John, anything, but somebody did a filibuster where they read the entire series of like Twilight.
Yeah, that was Ted Cruz, I think, or was it Mike Lee of Utah? One of those two. They don't do that much anymore, but like to stop the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, the guys are reading their grandma's cookbook and things like that. They read out of the phone book of South Carolina.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear that you said you wanted to make short or pieces.
That's no problem.
I thought you said introductions.
Oh, how are you? No problem at all. There are 4 things to grab. You might already make copies of it. Oh, yeah. I'm giving you the DBQ we're going to do next week now. Everything's taking longer. I'll make sure everyone has it. A lot of the stuff I put online, I just want to make sure you have a paper copy. I like paper copies.
Same, I do too.
Everyone grab one of those 4 things right there, and then